Welcome, everyone. My name is Glenda Dawson. This is LD here with me, and you are watching Glenda's Dragon's Den. We're coming live on the Conscious Awakening Network on Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and other various streaming platforms. I would like to take this moment to thank you for the emails, the comments, the reviews, and also just being here with us week after week. We're blessed that you're here. And today we have a phenomenal, very blessed man.
Well, thank you.
Not you.
Oh.
Again, not you. And this beautiful soul.
Oh, now I know it's not me. Can't be me.
Is Reverend Michael Carter. How are you today?
Hello, Glenda. Hey, LD. She was talking about both of us.
Don't joke.
All three of us.
Well, I kind of feel like I'm in a Reverend sandwich at the moment, but because Glenda's also a non-denominational ordained minister. So.
Yeah. But so tell us a little bit about yourself, or a lot. Basically.
Just a little. I serve a congregation here in North Carolina, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I am married. I got married on November 5th. I've had some practice, so it's not my first go around.
Congratulations.
And and what else can I tell you? I love to read, and I really do love religion, even though I'm not a very religious person. I love it for what it could be, maybe not so much for what it is at times. And I'm an experiencer and an author, and that's a lot of hats, a husband, a father, but this is life. And I juggle them sometimes, with grace and aplomb, and sometimes it's a hot mess, but I do the best I can.
We all do. We all end up in the hot mess
sometimes
at one point or another.
There's no instruction manual with these things.
No. I kind of wish they would send us one once in a while. You're at that fork in the road. Okay, come on, guys.
Do you want to tell her, should I? They send it, but the men don't read it.
I won't argue with that. I won't argue with that because I've been known to not. Yeah, unbelievable. But I'm happy, so that's the bottom line. Out of all those things, I'm happy.
And there you go.
And I got a lot of good people who love and support me.
That's what counts, isn't it?
So you mentioned you're an experiencer.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you'd like to share about that maybe some of our
I'll share my initial experiences. I've had the privilege to have encountered several species, Greys, Nordics, reptilians, and a blue person, which I thought was an Arcturian, and a praying mantis being. How can I say? When I I grew up in a religious family. I was raised Baptist. And I'm really recovering Baptist.
Yes, recovering.
It's still, those teachings and stuff still mean a lot to me. It's just that some of it was more dogma as I got older, and so I don't want to knock it because it works. It still works for my parents, and I know good people who hold on to that.
Right.
But I, listen, I'll tell you, I just started watching Star Trek 5 years ago. I know you're going to say, what rock did you crawl out from under? But when I was a kid, it wasn't, there was no room for that.
Nope.
There was no room for extraterrestrials and stuff like that. And so, but back in December 1989, now Kierkegaard, one of my favorite philosophers, said that life is lived forward, but it's only understood backwards.
Mhm.
And so when I was younger, I I saw things in my room. I would see auras around people and objects. I would see these little orbs. So now looking back, some of them look like the colors of the chakras. They
Mhm.
were little circles with almost like a donut, but they were flying, floating around. I could see the three dimensionality of my room, but I thought everybody did. So to me, it was not, it was just wow. So then, flash forward to December 3rd, 28th, 1989. At that time, my girlfriend at the time and I went to Mexico. We went to see the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum on the Yucatan. I'm giving you truncated version. But during that journey, I started turning away from my religion of origin. I started reading existentialist philosophy and metaphysics and tarot cards and all this stuff, which, as you know, was frowned upon,
Mhm.
highly frowned upon. And so I was leaving. I was moving away. I was opening up. And we came back. I was living in New York. I lived in New York for almost 30 years, New York City. And I kind of wanted to show off. I was really copper. My hair had turned colors. I didn't have dreadlocks then, but still was, I wanted to glow because they were freezing their, what's off in New York. So I was invited to a party. We got off at JFK. My girlfriend said, I'm going to stay home. It's cold. I'm tired. I was cold and tired too, but I wanted to glow. So I took the subway downtown to Hell's Kitchen, and got off at Times Square. And, we were hanging out. People were, ooh, boy, you look great. And I was kind of eating it up. No beverages, no adult beverages were served, but deviled eggs were. And I'm a deviled egg freak. So I left, after a while we talked and I left. And that night, I don't know to this day whether I felt a presence in the room or whether I don't know. But when I turned around, because I sleep on my stomach, there was a being, and you know what? I'm not going to leave because I have statues of all the beings that I've met. But it was, I should have brought him before the show. I just wasn't thinking. It was about, he was, I guess I'm going to call him a he, an individual, 4 feet tall, maybe 3 feet tall, um, wasn't gray, but whitish gray, chalk colored,
Mhm.
in my room at the foot of my bed. My girlfriend at the time either could not or would not wake up, and I just couldn't. I was so scared. There was a blue light, like a cobalt blue light around, and then a white light. My room was lit up. He had on a jumpsuit that looked like Reynolds wrap. Or if you
Mhm.
ever, I don't want to date you. I know you ever remember Lost in Space? Remember that? He had on one, it was like he had Reynolds wrap on and
Okay.
big eyes. And he looked at me and I curled up in the fetal position and pulled the covers up over my head. I'm not ashamed. Sandy, my wife, I mean, my girlfriend at the time, who later became my first wife, she was just out. And then I heard this like I like the wind, and then the temperature changed like I was outside. Let me tell you, this was in Manhattan. This was not on some rural, well, like Betty and Barney Hill coming back in New Hampshire. This was in 45 West 81st Street, the Excelsior Hotel. It's still there, Upper West Side, between Columbus Avenue and Central Park West. Anyway, I felt like I was outside, like the temperature changed. I finally grew a pair and I pulled the covers down and nobody was there.
Mm.
Nobody was there. Sandy woke up and she said, when I wrote my last book, Initiation, it's a book for experiencers.
Right.
I sent her a copy and she said to me, I remember when when she read it, she said, I remember that night. She said, I've never seen you so frightened. And she said, I vaguely remember these shadow figures in the room, but my mind kept saying, just go to sleep. Just go to sleep.
Mhm.
So that was the initial that I remembered. Um, I and then they started coming. These people, the little people with the big heads, they started coming every full and new moon
Mhm.
for about 6, 8 months, and they would paralyze me, and my eyes would be open, and they never spoke. They would show me pictures. The reptilian person spoke to me, but just said, like they always say, don't be afraid, which is easy for them to say
Right.
when you just walk through my wall. You know what I mean? But and even then, the mouth didn't move. It was like I had speakers in my head. So I could hear perfect diction. Don't be afraid. And it was in a male voice. So that was the beginning. Of course, I was living a double life because I couldn't talk about it. I got regressed by the late Bud Hopkins. Bud and I were very friendly when I was in New York. The woman who initially regressed me was Jean Mundy,
Mm.
Dr. Jean Mundy. And so that started this beginning. I had, and I'm not into propulsion systems and back engineering. My mind doesn't work like that. I'm more interested in the spiritual or how you change after you see them.
Mhm.
And so I met Zachariah Stitchin. He lived a couple blocks from me on the Upper West Side. So I was buying everything I could. And so there were a couple clergy. Dr. Barry Downing, who's my friend, a retired Presbyterian minister, wrote a book in 1968 called The Bible and Flying Saucers. Morris K. Jessup died under mysterious circumstances in the 50s.
Mm.
Virginia Brasington, so we had some female energy in the house. Right down here in North Carolina, she wrote a book. And so there were a couple people who kind of got the religious thing going, and that got me going because and so I stand on their shoulders because I said, oh, I'm not a nut. Now I don't know if these people were experiencers,
Mhm.
but just melding those two, because to me it's not only religion and the Bible or religion, but it's science and religion.
Right.
They can coexist because some of these beings are so spiritually advanced and yet they have this technology.
Mm.
So that's what got me on this path. I almost lost my job um, at the church I serve now, but there was a woman there, a wealthy donor, who turned on Ancient Aliens back in 2014, 2015, and said, I saw my minister on TV talking about little green men. And she went so far as to bring me to the board of trustees at the
Mm.
church. And I thought they were going to give in because she gives a lot of money to the church. But they stood up for me. They said, A, he doesn't preach it from the pulpit. B, he's probably right. We don't see anything egregious here. So let's just give it a break, give it a rest. And she stopped coming for several years, but she does come every now and then. And we have it's not glacial. It's we're warmer than that, but good morning, glad to see you. But fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Who was it? Maya Angelou said that when someone shows you who they are, you need to believe them. Because I mean, she was gonna have me fired from my job, my livelihood,
Yeah.
because come on, stop it,
Especially when it's
stop
her.
it. I couldn't believe it.
So I need to ask,
Yes.
on a scale of 1 to 10, when you, not just as an experiencer, but as a spiritualist, and look at the universe as we know it, and as much as we can think we wrap our minds around the depth and breadth of it, on a scale of 1 to 10, what level of arrogance do you think someone has to have to think
LD,
we are the top?
you are bad. You are a bad man. You are a bad man.
No,
You're a bad man, LD.
Yeah.
LD, you know the answer to that. Let me tell you, it is hubris. But and I'm not trying to be No, it is. It is a level of arrogance. But you and I, we were raised like that. Now we kind of got out of it. I mean, I'm assuming that we're kind of in the same generation, but we were raised that this is as good as it gets, that human beings are the pinnacle, and that we are to subdue nature, or at least tame nature. And now we know, we're beginning to know,
Mhm.
that no, we're one with nature, we're part of nature, that we can learn from um, other sentient beings.
Mhm.
And so, but I'm with you. It is a level of arrogance. It's a level of arrogance now because we know how big the universe is, that Webb the telescope tells. And it's hard to believe that people, I think people are afraid of the unknown.
Mhm.
I know they are, because I know I am to a degree, but because you have to change your whole paradigm now. If you believe let's say you were a scientist, maybe you're tenured, um, and now we have our government and we have people talking about UAPs, what we used to call UFOs. And maybe you've written, about a certain perspective about how the universe works. And now your whole paradigm is not only being challenged, but it may be wrong.
Mhm.
People do
Well,
not embrace that so easily.
there's a
Uh,
very
you know?
famous comedian who talks about agnostics.
Mhm.
He says, "I hear you, but when that ground shakes, you look up."
You better believe it. It's like my friends who were in Vietnam. There's no atheist in a foxhole. You know, and so yeah, and the world is changing. The paradigm is changing. It takes a long time. Human evolution can seem like it's glacial, but yeah, there is an arrogance there, and it's going to cost us. In the long run, we may wind up destroying ourselves
That's
because we believe in this, and religion's had a lot to do with this. So I must be. We believe in the illusion, and Einstein talked of separation. We
mhm.
believe that if I have more, you're going to have less. We're still caught up in the color of people's skin, the texture of their hair, who
Mhm.
they sleep with, those types of things. And those things are illusory, and it just divides us more and more. And look where we are. I mean, it's not a pretty picture.
That is verbatim how I describe it, is the
Yeah.
illusion of separation.
Yes. Yes.
But
What I do to you, I do to me. It.
but you know, people love their control, and in this day and age,
Yeah.
we have become so codependent,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and to accept that we are not the top of the chain,
Oh.
you're basically saying you're helpless compared to the forces that are out there. And yet a natural phenomena is going to level anything that stands in its way if that's what it's going to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
people just love believing that they, make their own way, and whoever has the most toys when they die wins and all that silliness. But again, that's what they grew up in. Now, I was 10 years old when they first landed on the moon. And that whole time, I was a rebel. I mean, I knew I was being fed manure,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. So I would agree where I had to agree, and I would okay, I understand what you're saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I wasn't buying it, and I wasn't
Yeah.
trading it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. You pick your battles. I know people have said the same thing in religion. Yeah, at a young age, I just was not feeling what they were telling me.
Right.
And yeah, and that's part of, we conform, we adapt. You start picking your battles. And we were talking about that before the show, and so, but that's some of that is survival tactics. Some of that is I just don't have the energy to argue with you.
Mhm.
Um, but the world, I mean, we're living in, the whole Newtonian physics. That's all passe now. I used to say that the old physics, the old science says, show me and I'll believe.
Mhm.
But the new quantum physics is like, no, 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 believe and I'll show you. That's
Yep.
a really different paradigm.
Mhm.
And, it's hard to wrap the mind around that. But we have to, because life goes on and you'll be a dinosaur. You'll be left behind. I see it with people. They're still stuck in the way they think the world should be. And yeah, you can envision the world you want, but you also have to live in the world as it is. So it's layers upon layers upon layers of stuff.
Right.
But here we are. I mean, I don't know if you saw this morning in Newsweek. Now I know this is Newsweek magazine, and this has been going on obviously for a few years. The mainstream media has been, but there was some UFOs flying over the nuclear plant. Did you see that this morning?
No,
No.
I
In I think in Leningrad.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And so here we are, where the New York Times, Newsweek, Washington Post, they're running these stories where just 50 years ago you were a nut.
Yes.
You were a nut,
You were put
and that
away.
is it.
You were put
So
away.
so what a difference a generation makes.
Mhm. Very
Well,
true.
I come from that generation of sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. But
Listen, brother, I'll be 66 this year. I was born in 57. So I remember the moon thing. I remember all that kind of stuff, with when King was shot and Bobby. And even though I was very young, I watched how people reacted to that and Jack Kennedy. So yeah. And here we are where our government is saying, you're not as transparent as one would like them to be, but they're saying there's things in our skies
Mhm.
that are technologically. I mean, it's like a science fiction thing, but the future is now.
Right.
The future is now.
Correct. Um, so you're an author. Tell us about your
I've
books
been
and
called worse. Thank you, Glenda.
how
you haven't been
you
called a poet, have you? Because I've
No,
been called
no,
a poet.
no. I've been called many things, but author is a good one. No, the first book I wrote, it's shameless self promotion.
no,
Uh,
please.
oh, the Alien Scriptures,
Right.
and that was one of my favorites, and it's been selling the most. I mean, um, I just wanted to uh, get people to see, and again, Dr. Barry Downing was talking about this, but we're coming at it from a different perspective. Even though I had to graduate from that, because
Mhm.
and I'm an experiencer and he isn't, so it's a little different. But that if you wherever you see the word angel in the Bible, which is
Mhm.
Malek in Hebrew, which means messenger, if you put extraterrestrial there, I don't like the word alien, but if you put star person, extraterrestrial, wherever you see angel,
Mhm.
it makes a lot of sense. And I believe that our ancestors, early human beings, and I want to be clear to listeners here, I'm not saying there's no such thing as angels. I'm not
Right.
saying that. But nowhere in the Bible does it says these beings have wings.
Right.
Nowhere. Which is not to say that they don't
They don't.
exist.
Right.
But I think our ancestors were so awed by the technology and that they were trying to explain in the nomenclature and the vocabulary of their day what they saw. So they're flying chariots. Well, in
Mhm.
India in Hindu they talked about the vimanas, which is translated flying machines. And
Right.
so they're flying disc, and they were trying to describe this technology. And I believe, and with the monotheistic religions, when you look at Hinduism, you look at Native American spirituality, Buddhist. There's always stories. Buddhism, which is a philosophy, but there's always stories about beings who come down from the sky
Mhm.
Some of them are mischievous, some of them act a fool, some of them bring wisdom, some of them intermarry. You look at, the Greek stories about the Greek gods and what have
Mhm.
you. And so I'm saying it's not far fetched to believe that these beings were talking about extraterrestrials, which is what Eric Van Doniken was talking about, which is Zachariah Stitchin was talking about, and the list can go on. And to me, it makes perfect sense. Now, I don't think that it takes away from the biblical messages. It's a beautiful book. It's a book of
Mhm.
poetry. It's a
Mhm.
book of life lessons. Um, I don't think there's anything demonic about any of this stuff, but I do think that we are looking at right in front of us all these years um,
The
evidence.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
I keep trying to explain to people that
yeah,
Leviticus was basically a survival guide for that time.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
that's why that was in there, because that was the law that the people were trying to exist under. And if you didn't know the law, the punishment was usually pretty severe. But that doesn't mean, the my challenge with the Bible was it was always meant to be, for the most part, an oral tradition.
yes.
And it was meant to evolve with the needs of the congregation. And the minute you write it down and then edit it like Constantine did, now it's an agenda.
Well, and it's law. Yeah,
Right.
I agree. And I have great respect, but no, it's not. But I have great respect. Period.
Right.
However, for these written scriptures, just because someone said something 5,000 years ago doesn't mean it's applicable now.
Mhm.
And you've got to use your common sense as well. And as you said, LD, because life is always evolving and growing, and and as our human beings, we need to tweak this here, adjust this here. Otherwise, you have no progress.
Mhm.
And so, um, I think that people are starting to see. Listen, when I first started talking about this, my more conservative brothers and sisters were like, "This doesn't exist. There's something wrong with you." 20 years later, now they're saying they do exist. They're
Mhm.
demonic, but they exist.
They
I
do.
call that progress because it may be low hanging fruit, but
Right.
before they didn't exist at all.
Right.
Okay, they didn't exist at all. But this is how human evolution, collectively speaking,
Right.
you know,
Right.
this is
Well,
how long it takes.
it's
Yesterday's blasphemies are today's truths.
it's all fun and games till they put the rubber in your mouth and give you the ECT.
Let me
So,
tell you.
and I have a deep history with mental health advocacy in New York State, and I'm a Queens boy, by the way. So,
Oh, okay.
yes, just as a
Give a
point of
shout
reference.
out to Queens.
Yeah. So, you know, I part of the reason why I wound up on boards of directors was because they said, well, what if these people are not crazy
Yeah.
and you just don't understand the frequencies that they are tuned to?
Yes, I agree. I agree. And
And
that can explain a lot of the things that they see,
Right.
that they hear.
Mhm.
But it's too easy just to say they're crazy and toss it out because
Mhm.
it takes work.
well, it's not
You,
just that it's
you
too
know?
easy, but it's much more of a moneymaker when you can just medicate them and put them
Ah,
still an ECT
it's
treatment.
the
Mm.
it's the money. Follow the money.
Yeah.
So, in New York State, the New York State legislature wanted consumers of mental health services to sign off on their own ECT.
Hmm.
And I, have a background in electrician, technology and theory. And I said, well, first of all, from an electrical point of view, if you knew which brain cells you wanted to kill and you don't, that electricity is going to flow in the path of least resistance and not necessarily in the linear line you think it's going to flow.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, anyone that could possibly benefit from such a barbaric torture is in no condition to sign off on it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's all kinds of, again, it's just layers upon layers of stuff. But I will tell you this though, again, for me, going back to the phenomenon, I know people who have had traumatic experiences, as you probably do as well. And
I'm blessed.
mine were, sorry, Glenda.
I'm blessed. I never had a traumatic one. I
Yeah,
had all of mine have been good.
yeah. I've had some bumps in the road, but I wouldn't trade it.
Right.
And when I asked an individual to stop doing what they were doing, they did.
Right.
Um, but so I want to make room for that because some people have. And you can't just say, oh, well, if you looked at it a different way, or let's all sing kumbaya. But I will say that for me, um, it enhanced and maybe expedited the spiritual path I was on. I was on a path
Mm-hmm.
because I was exploring and seeing that some of these things didn't fit anymore. And then when I started having these experiences, because they went on for several years, and then they would go away for a few years, and then it would happen again. Um, it changed me. It changed me in profound ways in my
Mm-hmm.
inner life. And physiological changes as well. I got by on less sleep, hair and nails grew, faster. I can't explain it. I guess the language now would be downloaded. I don't use that so much, but I felt more intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
My heart felt more open. It was more easier for me to be more authentic. I was easier. Now I was working towards this. It wasn't like they waved a wand and you
Right.
know, but it was easier for me to say I love you. It was easier for me to say I'm scared. It was easier for me to be more holistic in the way I walked through the world.
Right.
And then I started getting into energy healing and Reiki and um, I think, I call it Reiki, but I think it's something different because if you're an experiencer, when you're around them, they vibrate at such a high, your
Mm-hmm.
heart's, and so the energy that goes, even someone told me that, I was giving them a session. They said, that's not Reiki anymore, Mike. I don't know. That's from your friends. But my point being is that all that shifted. I was an actor in New York. I always wanted to be in the church, though, from a kid. And so that was always there. But I got the nerve to say, you know what? I'm not happy with this. I don't know if I want to do this all my life. And I wound up being a hospital chaplain.
Okay.
I wound up being a healer. And you hear these stories over and over again. Somebody's on Wall Street making tons of money, and they haven't. Doesn't have to be a contact. It could be experience. It could be an NDE. It could be an OBE. It could
Mm-hmm.
be just jogging or meditating and having this eureka moment. And then the person all of a sudden, no, I don't care about that. I'm going to go into Peace Corps. I'm going to go over here and be a massage therapist. So I believe that the experiences can be transformational, which is why I wrote, one of my books. At the beginning, I have 5 books.
Mm-hmm.
At One is Alien Scriptures. The other is this one. It's called A New World. If You Can Take It, God, Extraterrestrials, and the Evolution of Human Consciousness. And then I wrote a meditation manual called God Consciousness. I should have put God in parentheses because I'm not talking about a man or woman up in the sky. And then I wrote a book on the metaphysics of prayer and healing. But the point is that I didn't want to be known as the UFO minister. So after the first 2 books came out, I wanted to, I was like, oh, I'm pigeonholing myself. So I wrote that meditation manual. But basically, I am known. I mean, people don't, oh, there he is, the UFO minister. But I'm one of the very few clergy who are talking about this
Right.
openly.
Openly. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of talk behind doors, but not openly, not willing to admit it because they are afraid, of getting fired or the their parishioners frowning upon that, or just changing the whole paradigm of the whole church dynamic, I guess.
Yeah, which is going to be big because they're going to have to. But, I'll put it like this. No one called me from Washington, but you may have seen this. Maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago, there was something in a mainline paper, and it was on social media, that there was a gathering. I think it was in Washington, of like archbishops, or an archbishop of the Catholic Church, and
Hmm.
high-ranking bishops, and they were getting leaders to get together to talk about what would be the outcome, or what would be, um, how it would be if people thought or found out that we were not alone.
Right.
How would religious people, be able to process that? So
Right.
I wish they had called me. I'd have told them, but they didn't. Well, I'd have gave them my 2 cents.
Well,
But yeah, so I mean, these things that you said behind closed doors, and I know what you meant. But yeah, I mean, the people are preparing.
hmm,
Powers that be are preparing,
right.
because you can't keep this a secret. One day, you know why? My cell phone's upstairs, but that cell phone.
Hmm.
One day, someone's going to get a picture, not only of craft, which we know they do.
Hmm.
One day, they're going to get a picture of somebody coming out of the craft or
Right.
getting in the craft, and you're not going to be able to explain that away.
No. At that
So in
point,
order to, so you try to control the narrative.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I there has always been rumors that the Vatican does have
Mhm.
original writings
Yep.
with pictures and writings and all that of what extraterrestrials
Yeah.
and crafts and all that. So it would make sense that they would be the ones to start talking about it, to hopefully get it out into the religious communities and open up their eyes, because it's coming.
And they got to do something to get the parishioners back. You can't just visit on Easter and
Yeah.
keep
Yeah. Yeah. I
keep
know.
it going.
I tell people in my church, if I see them on Easter, I say, I know I won't see you again until Christmas. And if I see him Christmas, I go, I know I won't see you again until Easter. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but the government has brought that into play too. So
Hmm.
because they all talk, it's a network
Hmm.
of who and um, when to release information, that kind of thing. I get it. I think though uh, that we're just living in exciting times. There's an old Chinese, some people call it a curse, or you can call it what you want, a proverb, but it says, "May you live in interesting times."
Yes.
And no doubt that we are living in some interesting times now.
Hmm.
Well, when you talk about the concept of the illusion, you
Hmm.
know, power and status are all part of that illusion.
Yes,
So when
yes,
that gets wiped away, guess what? You know, you, you may be in your mind elevated, but compared to that, you ain't nothing. So,
yeah,
and I think that's a lot of the concerns about disclosure and how is status going to be maintained by those who are holding dear to it when disclosure happens.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, when that drives the conversation has agenda. When the conversation has agenda, it's going to be what they say it is. It ain't going to be real.
yeah. For me personally, I have a problem believing that the same people who've lied to me for 70 years will all of a sudden start telling me the truth. That's call me naive, but uh, um, and so even with what's being released now, there's an agenda. You can see it.
Right.
I can see it. I think Ray Charles could see it, because what's happening is um, we're being gently led that we're not alone.
Right.
Okay. However, we're going to be told, well, we're being told that they're an enemy. They're flying over our airspace. It is a national security issue. And it's really not, because let's face it, if they wanted to take us over, it could be done. So that's my first thing. I'm not going to mention names, and like we talked about, but there's certain people who talk out of both sides of their mouths, and and by that I mean, it's like, one of my favorite movies is The Godfather. You don't retire. You don't ever retire from the Cosa Nostra. Okay, you are always a member. And it's, so when I hear about people who used to work for the government, but now they're retired and they're on every show and they're talking about these things, my antenna go up. But it really goes up when people start talking about national security, because you can use that to cover a multitude of sins. The other thing is, and LD, you touched on it. Powers that be, this is not good news. These people can get here without using gas and oil and all that. And people are making tons of money off this, zillions of dollars. They don't want that. Exxon Mobil and British Petroleum, they don't want to hear about extraterrestrials with 0 point energy. No, that's a no. They could probably cure most, if not all, of our diseases, cancers, you name it. Do you know how much money is made on this, on this so-called research and what have you? And so those are just, and of course, they would look at our political structures and say, we need to tweak that. So it's not good news for a certain segment of our population. And I think we always have to keep that in mind. Who is benefiting from things staying exactly as they are?
Exactly. So why you?
I don't know. I had a psychic tell me that I've had lifetimes with these beings in Atlantis and what have you. That resonates with me, but I can't say that for sure. Reincarnation, I do believe in that, but it's very subjective. And in some ways, I mean, it was in Christianity. They took it out of the Bible. Hindus and the Buddhists know about it. I think that it's probably karmic. I do resonate. There's a longing I have for when I don't see them, and but there's also, I'm got my feet in more than one world in a way. But I think it's part of the mission that I'm here. Not in a grandiose way at all, but I think part of my mission here is not only to learn to love or to relearn to love, but to also to share that love. And there are many ways to doing that. And I don't think this is the first time. I know it's not the first time I've been involved with religion and healing and those kinds of things. So I just feel that I've kind of signed on to something, and they're reminding me of what it is I need to do. I like to think I'm pretty well balanced. I mean, I have a family. I have a daughter. I have to pay bills. I'm not kind of locked in to this reality. I've lost friends early on when I was in a support group in New York, only because they were kind of stuck. And if you weren't talking about this subject, they really had nothing to talk to you about. And life is to be lived.
Right.
And so I've integrated this into my life. It's taking some therapy and just also my working on myself. So why me? I guess I would say, why not me?
Well, it's not lost on me that if I understood you correctly, your first awareness of contact and experience was the night you got back from the pyramids.
Yes. Now, caveat. Like I remember I mentioned Kierkegaard, life is lived forward but understood backwards. When I talk to people who, hypnotherapists, other experiencers, what I was seeing as a child, they would have considered contact.
Right.
And being regressed. I was told, well, things came up that this was from the age of 7 years old. I would wake up with blood on my pillow from nosebleeds, those kinds of things. But for me as an adult, December 28th, 1989, where I saw this, it wasn't because I didn't know you could be out of your body and still have a body. And you see these, I didn't have any words to describe that. They could have been just beings that didn't need bodies. But for me to look at and to see, and on some occasions be touched by physically, these beings began December 28th, 1989.
So, how did that trip change you? That you were now out of that box and ready to begin that immersion?
It let me know I was more powerful than I thought I was. It let me know that um, not exactly at that moment, but my consciousness survives the
Mhm.
body.
Mhm.
Uh, um, because there have been a couple of times where they had taken me out of my body and my body was there, but I was still aware. It just gave me a larger perspective, not only of reality, the reality I knew, but it obviously expanded that, but also just who I was as a person, that I was more than just this, that this will go away, but I won't go away. And then of course it led me to looking at the scriptures in a very, very, very different way. And again, I had to study, I had to learn, studying forgiveness. What did that look like? How did that look like? It broadened my horizons and I think speeded it up. So that's the transformation that it gave me. That's why again I wrote that book called it's called Initiation, the spiritual transformation of the experiencer.
Mhm. Well, that sounds like they were all this time they knew you were more than what you gave yourself credit for.
Yeah, but aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all? And you don't have to go through what I went through to find out. Again, but if you get that teacher, if you get that experience, and I think religion got it wrong. Not all of it, but reality is so much more than life is stranger than we think and stranger than we can think.
Mhm.
And so I think these avatars and teachers, Yeshua being one, Muhammad, I mean, men and women, Jonah, trying to tell us that there's a larger reality, but that's threatening to people. And back then they were so ignorant that we'll just take your life. We could do that here too, but that's a threatening message because again, there were powers that be at the time of Jesus, at the time of Buddha, that
Right.
we don't want this. We are doing okay the way it is. You are a troublemaker.
Mhm.
And so you're upsetting the apple cart. And if any, that's one thing that hasn't changed all this time.
And a threat to our illusion.
Right.
Can't say it any better because that's
So,
basically what it is.
what is it that made you decide to take the trip?
It was always there. I can't say it was a conscious decision like, okay, I'm going to change. It was organic, it was evolutionary. That, wait a minute, Michael, all this stuff you believed and you were taught, most of that stuff is not true because you always have the choice. There are people who have these experiences, but they say, I'm not going there.
But
I'm safe.
literally, what was it about that that caused you to go to see the pyramids?
Well, no, I saw the pyramids before this. Well, we were just on vacation. Now, someone may say, well, Michael, you were being edged. You were being, I'm not saying that wasn't true, but in my conscious mind,
Mhm.
I was just going to see the pyramids. We were there. It was a day trip. I was already studying, cultures and various cultures and stuff. So I was already on a spiritual path. So one could argue that maybe you were being, but I don't know. But I know when I came back from Chichen Itza and Tulum that night, I had my first visitation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I'm just trying to get your understanding of if there is or if there isn't a moment, that aha moment, that epiphany of, oh.
I think it happened afterwards because I'm the type of person that when I'm interested in something, I exhaust it. And
Mhm.
so I read everything I could on UFOs, trying to understand what happened to me. And then, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. The teacher also disappears. In my readings, I came across ministers, because that's what I was,
Mhm.
who did not have contact, but they were interpreting these scriptures in light of that reality. And that just struck home to me. Like, that's the eureka moment.
Mhm.
That happened. And that's what got me going.
Now you have a Facebook page.
Yes, I have a fan page, Reverend Michael J. Carter.
Okay.
I have a regular page, and you go to either one, Reverend Michael J. S. Carter, and I will respond. My email is Michael J. Carter, um, Michael J. S. Carter at Gmail. My web page is you just type in Reverend Michael J. S. Carter or Michael J. S. Carter, it will come up,
Mhm.
and I will respond. If you need to talk or disagree or whatever, I will get back to you.
Okay.
One thing I have coming up, but maybe we'll talk before then. In um, in September, I'm going back to Michigan. They have something called Michigan UFO Con. Mary
Mhm.
was there. That's how we met. And if you can stream it on, it's just been streaming for about 2-3 weeks. I did a show with some other folks with Lawrence Fishburne on the
Right.
History Channel called History's Greatest Mysteries. It's on the Phoenix Lights,
Oh,
and
okay.
they did a really, really nice job. So
Oh,
that's streaming now.
good.
Mhm.
Yes, we're going to be there in Michigan also this
Yeah.
year.
So I'll see you in September. All goes
Yes.
well.
Yes. Looking forward to it. Is there anything else that is coming up for you besides?
That's all I know of for now. I haven't heard from Ancient Aliens. Usually I may do 2 shows a year, used to be a little more.
Mhm.
Um, but right now, the church is keeping me busy. My daughter's 17 years old. She'll be in college in a year and a half. Um, New marriage. My life is full.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you said you had several books.
Yes, I have.
They could find you on
Oh,
Amazon.
well, yeah, just go right to Amazon and
Right.
type in Reverend Michael J. Carter or Michael J. S. Carter, and they should come up.
Right. I'm going to show the link to the first book, and
Yeah.
they could go from there and find
Yes.
the
I
other.
appreciate that very much.
Yes.
Now, how does your 17-year-old daughter process all this?
It's interesting. She's in, well, she processes it. When she was younger, she was telling me about some things that she had experienced. As a matter of fact, today we texted, but we haven't had a chance to talk. And she wanted to tell me that she saw something in the skies over Nevada when they were headed out to um, to California. So they're young, and it doesn't they just take it in stride. At least I find. And we've talked about this, and she knows it. She has my books, and she kind of knows. She's a deeply spiritual person. She's a Pisces, and she's a deeply spiritual person, and she's clairvoyant. She sees things that haven't happened yet. She told me about past lives when she was 5 years old.
That is cool.
Yeah,
That is very nice. Yes, when I was growing up, my father was the one that was very strict religious, couldn't say anything. My mother was the one that was open and would say, "You come to me and you talk to me about everything."
yeah.
And my grandmother. So I actually was blessed that I had people
Hmm.
to
Yeah,
talk
because
to.
otherwise it's hard to. I did for several years. I couldn't talk to anybody about it except I was in a support group that helped.
Right.
But you're keeping a secret.
Mm-hmm. And it's stressful.
That it is.
And even then, to be in a support group is nice, but you're still kind of in isolation with that as compared to
Yeah,
today, where it's just all over,
yeah. It
the
is. It
validation.
is. It is. Yeah, the support group helped me immensely, but it was still you were in a group, but it was better than nothing because it
Right.
was hard. Like I told you, someone tried to get me fired. People thought you were nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Is there anything else that you would like to cover? I think we're about 5 minutes away.
Well, I just want people to know that, um, you're more you're just more than you think you are, and I believe that, and in a deeply spiritual way, and that you don't want enjoy your life. You don't want people to take away your joy, and life can be a challenge, but you just tap into whatever path you're on, and if you're leaving a path, follow that path, see where it leads you.
Mm-hmm.
The right people will come your way, the right books will come your way, um, because love is really the most powerful force in the universe. If it wasn't, they wouldn't people wouldn't be trying to repress it.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't, it would you wouldn't people wouldn't be threatened. And you can look through history and see that people are very afraid of it.
And
And
people would be
so,
trying to complicate it and
exactly,
tell you what it's allowed to
yeah,
be and what
it's
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 not
it's
allowed to be.
it's just powerful, and whatever that means for you, because love means different things to different
Hmm.
people. But don't give up on it, because it's the only thing that really will last, and that's what we're here, I believe, to learn to do.
And that's actually what all religions are truly based on.
Yeah,
All the other
until people
layers are
get
just
the rest is commentary.
exactly.
Yes,
And a
Exactly.
sales
yes,
pitch.
That's it.
yes, yeah.
But so thank you. This was
Thank you
great.
both.
And
Maybe
I
maybe
can't
we'll do it again one day. But I thank you, and
yes,
I want to thank
definitely.
Mary for putting in a good word, and
Oh,
now looking forward to seeing you in the fall.
oh
Well, you
yes.
may see us before the fall because we are planning a trip,
Mm-hmm.
and
We gotta pass through North Carolina. I drive.
Well,
I like to
yeah, let
drive.
me know. You got my contact info.
Yes.
I live closer to the Appalachian Mountains, closer to Tennessee, that part of the state, here in
Okay.
the mountains, because
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina is a big state.
Right.
So, yeah, let me know.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
I've been
you.
to Asheville. We've been through Asheville.
Oh, then you
I,
know.
and it's a beautiful state,
Yes.
and
Oh
I'm
my
glad
God.
that you have found a place there with a congregation that appreciates all the facets on the jewel that you are.
Mm.
Boy, that means a lot. Thank you, LD. And thank you, Glenda.
Thank
But if you
you.
ever want to do another show, just let me know.
Of course.
Because
Now,
we got so much to talk about.
oh, yes, we do.
We
Yes, we
do.
do. So just hold on for a second, and we're going to thank our audience for being here with us. And have a blessed day, have a blessed week, and see you next Wednesday. Love you all. Bye.